First, it was IQ. Then we embraced EQ. But in today's business landscape, there's a third intelligence leaders can't afford to ignore: TQ, or technology intelligence. My guest today, Jody Jankovsky, has spent 45 years in IT and has just written the book on technology intelligence for business leaders. In this episode, we talk about why TQ is essential for thriving in the intelligence age, how to spot the hidden gaps draining your tech investment, and what frameworks can help you finally align technology with business outcomes. If you're ready to future-proof your leadership, this conversation is for you. I'm your host, Katherine Jelinek, and this is the Expanders Podcast, presented by The Skinny Platform, the place for entrepreneurs with something to share and who want to be heard. Hello, everyone. I'm really excited for this episode. Today, we are speaking with Jody Jankovsky, founder and CEO of Blackline and author of the soon-to-be-released Skinny book, Technology Intelligence, the Business Leader's Guide to Thriving in the Intelligent Age. Welcome, Jody. Thank you for being here.
Katherine, it's a pleasure, as always, to talk about this and also just to meet with you in general and have a really fun conversation about something that's really, near and dear to my heart.
So your book to me is one that's really going to break some doors down in the best way. We talk about this all the time in our offline conversations that are not recorded. And your journey in even writing this book was one where so much more came out through the process than you even began with. And you have new language and a new understanding of the larger issue that came from, embarking on the journey of documenting this. So I want to just stop and hear from you, what did you come away with in writing this book?
Yeah, what I found very interesting about the process of writing a book, especially one built upon decades of experience. And so sometimes that maybe it was definitely underestimated for me of what it was going to take to dive and explore deeply back into my roots of technology, what had become, let's just call second nature, an understanding of technology and the way that companies use it and the way that technology affects our world. When you have to explain it to another person, when you have to create context and connect emotionally, something which how do you explain to somebody how you learn how to ride a bike? You just ride a bike, and it just became that. Maybe at the time when I first wrote, I'd be like, oh my gosh, the way it felt and how I learned and all the details of it. It's just how you are today. And I found that with writing this book was the amount of introspection and exploration that I did almost in my own mind, into my relationships, in my past, the things I learned, the challenges overcome, was really not just an exercise, an academic exercise. It became this emotionally connected, as well as purpose-driven process that made it so much more enjoyable, because now I'm not just writing a textbook that I'm supposed to hand on the laps of business leaders and say, okay, you're back in college, now study this, and then there's going to be a test at the end of the quarter. This was more like, this is a journey, and I'm going to take you on it with me as best I can, in a way that connects each business leader to the real challenges that they're having, that they might be having, or that they would also jointly have experienced. Even though it's from my perspective, I wanted to show how the challenges that I overcame were the same challenges that they're trying to overcome, just from a different lens. So that really made the book writing process. When you think of book writing, really, what's book writing? It's just idea transcribing. It's really what it is. And for any thought or idea to be connected to people, it needs to be connected, and that's emotional. It can't just be, let me just write out a bunch of things that I can understand. It's identify key concepts and stories to help connect it back to business people who are trying to solve real problems. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't help if I just throw a bunch of, well, this is what I learned, and here's the framework. You go try to apply it now. Um, it became a process of now finding what were those stories and those real life examples, and how can those experiences now be relevant to business people today and their challenges. Made for a very um, I mean, it took months. It was like writing and then going back and saying, this doesn't connect to me emotionally.
Mm.
So now I've got to rewire this so that the business people would find value in it, not only as a read that is interesting, but it also is now, if people can pull a handful of concepts out of this book, I it is a winner to me.
Yeah, there's more than a handful of concepts, and it's very solid. And okay, so two things I love so much. One is the journey you got to take in really getting to actually wrap your arms around the entirety of your craft in one sitting to some degree, not really one sitting, but for this project
Yeah.
and see it as a whole. Because Jody's been doing this for what, how many years? Like 35? Yeah.
Actually 45.
Yeah, about 45. That's not,
I
that's
started. I
huge.
started. I started when I was 12. So I got. I'm in the. I'm going to say one little sidebar. I'm in the
Yeah.
most enviable position of just about any human, and what that is at a very young age, I
Mhm.
was able to identify a craft to focus my energy on, both that I loved and then also that I was good at,
That's
and
amazing.
and then it carried my entire life. Like I've
That
been
is,
in
yeah.
this world since I was 12, and just I've never stopped not enjoying it. And I realize now at my age how much of a blessing that is. I'm so grateful, because there's not a lot of individuals who can say, yeah, they find it along their way, and they gain that because you're
Mhm.
experiencing, or as humans we're experiencing so many different things. Um, but I am over that. Like, wow, I really had a great opportunity. My dad and my uncle that just was what they needed to do. My dad needed to, because um, the architecture business was not great in the late 70s with an interest rates at 20%. Nobody wanted to build anything. And he had to feed a family of, 6 kids. So he
Yeah.
pivoted, just like I've had to pivot 1,000 times in my career, but he pivoted, and thankfully, I just happened to be at the age. I just happened to be curious, and I'm in the garage with him. Like, okay, let's build something cool, and
Yeah.
it was like awesome. So I found that to be that just as a like that drove so many, like 45 years. Keeping that momentum started then.
It is so rare that you get to have 45 years and it's still going of of a relationship with something you love, like your craft, like that, which is
Yes.
beautiful. And the fact that you're coming out with this book, we were just joking about it before because technology intelligence and what you've actually been able to write in this book in terms of the fact that technology intelligence is just as important to this era's leaders as emotional intelligence and IQ, if not more so, because they really have to lean into this to be able to capitalize on the next wave here. You really are made to write this book. Like nobody else can say 45 years and not already be exiting entirely from work life. It's incredible. So before we dive into that, which is going to be, this book has so many juicy layers to it and your content in general, but I want to get into your bigger purpose or the bigger problem that you actually finally found the words for through doing the book. Because like you said, you're an expert in this. You don't even you don't have the words because you're dealing with it every day and you're not naming it. But this forced you to really drill down to the basic language and name the core issue. And you actually had to pause the book project for a while to like rifle into it. Speak to that. Like, what is the heart of the problem that your book speaks to?
That is a great point. It's exactly what I had to do. Is like a lot of engineers, and as I'm a computer scientist. I solve problems, and so I solved the problem. And what I needed to do was stop and say, well, what problem am I solving? What what has happened over all those decades? Again, looking um, from a lens of it just became internal to me what we were solving, and what
Yes.
that core problem is called the overarching why do this. The why is IT is broken. IT is broken the way in which IT is seen, how it's deployed, how it's managed, how individuals provide counsel around it, how leaders see it and lead it and apply it to their organizations. The entire industry, which I call the technology industrial complex, which is a collection of vendors and manufacturers and service companies and experts, all have evolved over that 40, 50-year time period that I've been observing it. It's kind of like watching on the sidelines, watching manufacturers of computers rise and fall, watching software manufacturers rise and fall, watch them transform, watch them evolve from companies that built spreadsheets at the very beginning, which was one of the first applications, by the way, that people used word processors and spreadsheets. It's funny. That was the core business case at the time. Watching those organizations evolve rapidly, and what didn't evolve at the same pace are frameworks for business leaders to understand how that applies to their business, how to hold accountable organizations, people, experts, their counsel, because the this we call it the TIC, the technological industrial complex, has evolved so rapidly and has, let's put it in, they put in place methods of how technology is deployed, how it's presented, how it's sold,
Mm-hmm.
um, is into it like let's call it not intentionally. It just has evolved fast. It's a young, it's a very, very young um, industry, like super young compared to, law, engineering, accounting,
Yeah.
finance,
Yes.
banking, insurance. These things have been around for millennia.
Right. Right. And
Okay.
I mean, quick side tangent in your book, I found it fascinating when you make the point that this industry does not have a governing body the way that almost all the other industries that are so structural to business have governing bodies. And there's no one that is setting down what needs to be done in order to have that integral alignment for a company.
Yeah, there's governing bodies for every one of the ones I just mentioned. You've got to be
Mhm.
certified. You got to pass a test. You have to have you got to have some letters behind your name when you're in our business. You don't need those.
Wild West.
You can say you're a CIO. You can say you're an IT director. You can say you're a senior engineer. You can say anything. And if you could essentially convince or snow the people that you're giving advice to that you have the qualifications, you don't have to back it up with basically anything.
Right.
You don't have to be a computer scientist. You don't have to have any certs behind your name in order to be an IT expert. You can be anybody. And that's essentially what's happened. That's part of this tick. That's part of this gap, this chasm that has formed between the business leader and the technologists, that has created the outcomes and the lack of outcomes. That is why I wrote this book. What I've seen is across the spectrum of problems and solutions and technologies and technologists. So when I say technologists, it's the people. And then you've got the providers, the manufacturers of technology. They're in a different camp with salespeople and their own thing that they want to do. So they all descend upon the business leader, if you want to call it like descend upon it. How does the business leader evaluate that? How do they evaluate just about anything else in their business? They either have counsel, they have their own education. They went through college, they've got an MBA, and they have all the different pieces that they learn. They learn about business law, they learn about accounting, they learn about finance, they learn about how insurance, they learn about supply chain. They learn about these components because it's
Yes,
well
that
documented.
is a framework of thinking, is what you're sharing with that. Like the
They're,
education we all have is our own framework and our perspectives.
Yeah, exactly. So there's these frameworks. In IT, IT has typically been technological focused.
Hmm.
The technologies, right? Security and cloud and um, uh, let's just call it. The focus is on the technologies themselves.
Right.
Very rarely is there any focus on the management, on the governance, on the expectations you should have, questions to ask. There's no framework. The only frameworks that are out there are technologically based frameworks, not management leadership frameworks. Those are not available. I want to
So
pause.
what do you mean when you say technologically based frameworks? What are those for like someone like me who is nearly a grandma regarding IT?
Sorry, we may have to cut that. Like it popped up like it was going to do a reboot. I'm like, do not reboot right in the middle of
Oh,
this.
no problem. That's, well,
um,
maybe.
So there are frameworks like ITIL. That's a framework for, it's supposed to be for management, but it's very technological focused. There are certifications, the CCNA, the Microsoft certifications. There's ones specific for tool sets you can get certified in. There are the frameworks that are out there are focused towards technologists. They're focused towards the CIO or the IT director. They're not focused for the business leader.
Mm,
There isn't a framework that says, oh, so let's match a business leader's ability to understand the way in which technology is deployed, managed, serviced, organized. There's a gap there, and that
yeah.
chasm is needs to be. That's what I've seen is that project after project, the outcomes being so poor, and that's where the core of IT brokenness is. To describe to the business leader today is it's the lack of outcome. You business leader, you think in terms of outcome. The technologist thinks in terms of systems and technologies. So you want an outcome of stability, let's say, and they think of cloud and redundancy and interoperability and how these technologies operate in a way that becomes stability or it becomes redundancy, but
Hmm.
they don't speak in those terms. They speak in the technologies themselves, where the business leader is looking for the outcome of how technology drives value inside their organization. And when those two things are mismatched, let's call it, there's a
The
essentially
golf.
there's a
Hmm.
communication divide there.
Yes.
That's where I've seen poor outcomes or lack of accountability, where we'll walk into an organization over and over and over again. And why it's such a big problem is this is it's so grossly bad, like grossly bad, where hundreds of thousands of dollars are
Yeah.
being wasted on unused technology. We walked into a manufacturer, they were $70 million manufacturer spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on technologies that were either outdated, unnecessary, unused, licenses for people that weren't there, technologies they didn't need, but they were sold. And that's just one example. It's happening over and over again. Or you walk into an organization where we call it the shiny object syndrome, is that they saw a shiny object and they implemented it, right? Or they've got the square peg in the wrong hole, right? They bought something wrong, a completely wrong technology for what they it was actually intended for. Just they bought the wrong tool, and it's so grossly wrong. Or the overkill problem. They just like they bought what is the equivalent of a fire hose, 5 inch
Mhm.
fire hose to put out a fire, and all they needed was a garden hose. It's
Totally. It's like
uh,
sending me into the grocery store hungry and come out with way too much.
yes, exactly. It's like, yeah, exactly.
You don't need 5 meals, you just need
Yeah,
one.
yeah. You don't need all this tech. You didn't need that. That was the wrong fit. That was overkill. That was underkill. It's not being. Your problem isn't this. You're not just managing it. It's not being maintained. Your issues aren't the technology. The problem is you've got too many pieces of technology and they're unmanaged, and you're
So
paying for things
Jody,
you don't need. So this is part of this is part of the brokenness that was all over the place.
yes, and the thing is this tick, the technology industrial complex. I mean, when you say it and you call it tick, you can just kind of see it as this like blood sucking, energy sucking complex for companies. There's a lot of money being made off of this schism of lack of language and understanding, and it's technology, so we can just throw a lot of money at it, and it's okay that it's confusing, but it's not. And this schism doesn't have to exist, and it's counter to business and being able to actually function with the technology being purchased. So then that's what this book addresses, is that gap. Yes. And that's what
Yeah, that's the core.
you, yeah.
That's what it's there for. It's there to, if there was one key takeaway,
Mm-hmm.
my hope of this book is to create a language, to create a new language, not necessarily a new language, like you got to learn German.
Mm-hmm.
It's a language of, um, let's fill that gap. Let's close that gap between technologist and business leader by educating the business leader of how the tick works. What are the characteristics of the tick? That's part of the book as well. What to look out for. What it, and I guarantee you, it will resonate. Yep, been there. Yep, done that. Yep, that happened to us. Yep, 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 yep. That is the tick. You can see it. The rest of the book is intended to break down what components for you, Mr. Business Leader, you need to have. What mindsets do you need to have that to create this intelligent leader, this tech intelligent leader? And then what does the organization require? So it's leadership, the other is the organization. So it's kind of split into two categories inside the book, because that's what I've seen. It's part, let's equip and help the business leader become more educated so that
Mm-hmm.
that communication gap gets narrowed. Now apply that to the impact to the organization. Where does, let's call it a concept, challenge or opportunity, I call it CHOP. Where does that now go? Like how do you assign it? Where do you assign it now into people, roles,
Mm-hmm.
there, as a way that you can now see it with your eyes and be like, it's now not, it's not obscure. It's not unknown. It's like you can see it clearly, because business leaders are intelligent, creative problem
Right.
solvers that drive all kinds of value, and they do it all over the place. But in this one area of technology, I've seen over and over and over again over 45 years that these really intelligent, gifted business leaders get outmaneuvered by the tick constantly. And
Yes.
it's like,
Yeah.
you don't need to be outmaneuvered anymore.
I think one of the needs for this book right now, and we discussed this in the early framing of your book, is the fact that most business leaders are like, AI, yes, slap that right on top. And one of the things that you call out is, in this age of AI, if you don't address kind of the whole, AI is just that tip of the iceberg, and there's a whole beast underneath the water still. And if you don't address that, the AI won't even be as functional. It'll be the same issue over again. And so this era is one where it's time to officially clean up and bridge that gap and then get to use the new most wonderful thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's say that what we see is that we'll walk into um, it'd be equivalent walking into $1 million house and be like, oh, okay, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to change the paint on this wall. I want to change these fixtures, and I want to take down this wall over here so I can make you know the kitchen bigger. And you're
Right.
like, that's all great stuff. I see where your head's at. I see you want to make this livable, right? Except your foundation is cracking, it's leaking. It's gonna you can see that in the back, the back part of your house is sinking into the ground, right? Your HVAC hasn't been upgraded in 10 years and doesn't work. Your plumbing is leaking. You've got your electricity is underpowered for this house. So do you want to put paint or do you want to fix the foundation? And what happens is I want to pretty this up. AI is going to solve all my problems. I'm going to feel so good in my $1 million house while your foundation is sinking and your plumbing
Mm-hmm.
is leaking and your electrical keeps going out and your house is crumbling and
Mm-hmm.
you're running around poking holes in the dike while but you think AI is completely dependent upon the rest of the infrastructure, the business layer of your business, the business software. It's it's dependent upon your business intelligence layer. It's all dependent on each other. You can't skip it. The technology intelligence gives you that framework so you can see that. You can see that you've got gaps in your foundation. Let's fix those first. You've got gaps and problems in your line of business. You've got systems that don't interoperate. You've got data silos. You've got inaccurate data. Well, you can't work with AI. I'm sorry. Doesn't provide the promise if your data is inaccurate. You can't get timely, accurate data because it's a Herculean effort to try to assimilate that in the one place. So TQ is intended to give you that, oh, aha, I got a problem with my foundation. Let me focus my energy there first. And then I can work on my HVAC and my electrical. Then I can get to putting in a new kitchen or painting walls or taking down wall, whatever kind of improvements you want to make to the living arrangement.
Yes. So, can you give us a peek into TQ, technology intelligence, like the framework that is that new common language, how to think, how to see it for the business leader? Give us a little dive into that.
Sure. So similar to EQ, so EQ, you focus first on yourself and become aware of yourself and the way in which you handle yourself emotionally. It kind of breaks it down that way. And then
Mhm.
it says, okay, once you have that, now you move into you socially. How do you appear now to others? It's a similar model, which is first let's look at the mindset related to technology. The mindset, the way that you see it, that's the very first component of TQ is the digital mindset. The technological solutions around you from their core enablers. So you start to see the challenges you have in your business. I call that either challenges or opportunities, by the way. I call that CHOP, challenge or opportunity. Challenge being got to fix something, we got to transform something, we've got to rectify a problem. An opportunity is there is a technological solution to advance my organization to take and to move into a new market, to capture new business, to do something different than the competitors, and it's technological focused. So the first step is just having a mindset of, oh, I see that thing in my business from the lens of digital technology. What can be? There's three core enablers to it. It's like there's algorithms. You see things in terms of there's logic, there's data, and then there's automation. That's what makes up all of technology. Those three core components. When you start to say, oh, what that challenge or opportunity is, it's going to require logic. It's going to require us to just take what I understand and transform it into a technological solution. Great. Whatever that is, some logic, some process that you can think of. And then there's data. Well, I need what is happening in the business. I need to have that be data collected so that I can then analyze. So there's a data component. So you see it in terms of, oh, that's data related, let's call it, or automation, which is I've got a view of it. I have the data. Now I just got to hook together things that maybe are manual and let's automate. So if you just know that those three pieces are possible because you've got a digital mindset, now you can start to look at innovating as opposed to I just have some problem. Because remember, as the business leader, you're going to help drive whatever it happens to be as a solution. You don't relegate any longer. You don't say, IT, fix this. You're an active participant. The business leader needs to be an active participant in the way in which technology gets used, the way in which it gets deployed. I need you. We need you as we need you to be technologically intelligent because you're going to help drive the outcome that the business needs, as opposed to relegating it and assuming that the technologist sees it the same way you do,
Right.
because they don't. I just know
And
I've
then you
all over
communicate about it naturally.
and then communicate about it naturally.
Okay,
That's
so that what
that's
you
the
just said.
first piece. Yep,
Yes.
that's a digital mindset. The
Yes.
second piece is taking and doing what you just said, right? Like let's take it and drive it to a solution. That's the innovation mindset. What is the approach now that you take to take what you've identified now that you see technology or you see a solution? The innovation mindset is a part of a framework that helps you implement that. It's a process. There's tools in that, like the solution framework, which is a way of reframing a challenge or opportunity, rewiring it, running it. Like there's 3-4 step process of let's take a methodical approach to innovating. And innovating is an often misunderstood term, by the way. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's actually I talk about this in the book where it is such an overused term and misunderstood term. Everything is innovative. Everything is an innovation. And having an innovative mindset or an innovation mindset is that innovation at its core is a cycle. It never ends. It in technology and business, it's a cycle of innovation. It's not a event that occurs and then it's over. And then there's structure, discipline around it. You just don't come up with an idea because you see it and then you just run. I've seen that happen over and over again where well-intentioned business leaders rightly identify a challenge. They see it as there's a digital solution to this. And then because they're not following a framework, they're not following a method, they get ahead of themselves. They choose, then they end up with all those tick things that I'd mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
The shiny object. Oh, they're in their zeal to solve the problem. The first vendor that comes around that sounds great and has a great sales pitch and a great slide deck and a great demo. Oh my God, they solved everything. And every
Mm-hmm.
question we asked, the sales guy was like, yes, yes, we can do that. It's awesome. We got you covered, man. And you're like, whoo, my job's over. This sales guy told me everything I needed to see. And
Mm-hmm.
then when actually I think deserves to get used and put into place, it's like, wait a second, I thought you said it was going to handle our orders with these kind of exceptions that we've got. Oh yeah, it can do that, but it's going to cost you an extra $50,000 for us to
Yeah.
customize it. But you didn't say that during the thing. Oh yeah, we did. No, you didn't. Yeah, we did. Yeah. Anyways, that kind of process occurs regularly in the zeal to solve the problem because the problem is so big and it looks so big and it's so painful without following a established process that I introduced in the book. You end up with, let's call it, not misfitted solutions quite a bit. That's where
Sure.
they're overkill, they're underkill, they're square pegged round hole, because the process can't be rushed. You can't shorten the process. There's a term I used in my business and I've used for years, and it's part of the concept. If it's not written, it's not real. And not written and not real is the idea that when you're dealing with technological innovation, every concept that you believe and then a technologist says that they're going to do needs to be written, and it needs to be matched. There needs to be, I'm sorry to say, everybody probably will hate me for this, you've got to document, you've got to put this on paper. You can't just assume it any longer. That so many well-intentioned projects go off the rails because not only do you have a communication gap between technologist and business leader, now you've got the tick going in there trying to sell software or solutions. They're trying to get consulting fees. They're trying to man create some kind of an architecture that doesn't align. And because there's not written documentation around that, there's an accountability hole.
Sure. Yes. But the thing is like the business leader listening to this might be like, oh my God, do I have to document something else? And it's not that as much as you offer a framework from which it can be the container for this path of integration and alignment when they're introducing a new innovation or solution. It's just taking this path to make sure it's holistically done within the company. And you guide them through that documentation with the frameworks that you offer. Yes.
Yeah, you nailed it. That it's a container. There's a container for it. It's not overly complex, and it's actually very common sense approach. But the idea is to call it something within the context of what most business leaders do already. They don't establish and undergo initiatives without doing the same thing. There just isn't a framework to help them do it when it comes to technology, when it comes to financial decisions or acquisitions or new production equipment, or like they'll do a really good job of doing that naturally because there's a domain knowledge there. What I've found is that there isn't the equivalent inside of technological solutions, especially in the small mid-sized business. Maybe larger organizations have got that where they have full-time CIOs, CTOs, different level. Like they're, I've seen in those same organizations, by the way, I've seen them not have a really great frameworks for doing this as well. Even more so in the small mid-size organization, a container, a place to put it, giving some guidance. We need to have these components in our solution as part of our innovation mindset. Yes, that's what I've seen, and I recommend, and I've seen work.
Do you want to introduce elements of that framework that is used to really guide the side of technology intelligence that's with the other, not just the awareness of self, but me within the organization, this like concept within the organization? Do you want to share a little peek into that? I don't know how we could do that without it being, a whole class, but I trust you as to know where we should at least reveal little pieces.
Yeah, let me actually do that and give the right terminology here,
Okay, great.
since
And
we're
that
taking
might even be behind you, yes, on that whiteboard.
that's the aim.
Okay.
That's towards the end.
Okay, great. Further framework to help with the organization.
Yeah, so I can introduce a concept of innovation. Let me think about this because there's a lot here, and let me think of what would be.
Take a minute. I'm going to press commit. So you
There's
don't.
there's a fun story in here that um, it ties back to the idea of the innovation mindset. Part of the innovation mindset follows the innovation adoption curve, which is I want to see what the guy's name is. I always forget his name. Hold on a second. Let me see here.
Let me search it real quick.
Jeffrey Moore.
Okay, you got it.
Yeah. In Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm, he describes the innovation adoption by organizations. And it just so happens that it ties well together. Again, it's a mindset. I could have a whole conversation just about that side of the mindset, which is this concept between innovation, um, maximizing efficiency versus maximizing opportunity. Two different mindsets
Hmm.
to apply towards an organization. So, for example, there's something in nature called the waggle dance that bees do. So, for
Mm.
millions of years, bees do this thing called the waggle dance, which they fly back to the hive. And essentially, the dance is intended to tell the rest of the hive, this is where you go to find nectar. This is where you go. Go this direction. Whatever that
Interesting.
dance
Yeah,
is,
right. Their map.
it's like their map, right? 80% of the hive follows the waggle dance. And the reason why they follow it is because that's where the nectar is. In order for them to maintain and continue production for the hive to survive, they need to maximize the efficiency of let's get as much nectar out of that field, out of those flowers, out of that section. You want to maximize that. So that's maximizing efficiency of it. And this applies to organizations as well, where the other bees, they're explorer bees, they ignore the waggle dance and they go off in all different directions.
To
Look
find the next one.
to find the next source. And if you don't have that balance inside of the beehive, you could have, you know, a bunch of cows stumble into a field, eat all the flowers, now the hive dies. If the explorer bees weren't maximizing for opportunity, which means they may not find anything. They might zoom off and come back and they didn't find anything. They zoom off, they may not find anything, but they will. If 20% of them, they will find another source. And then they will ensure the survival of the hive by not, they call it the explore exploit trade-off. That's the term that mathematicians use.
Hmm.
I believe in the concept of technology. That's not a trade-off. It can be done at the same time. And it's a different mindset, meaning you have people in the organization which are naturally prone towards maximizing efficiency, and you need that. You want people looking and taking what you already have and make the most out of it, make the most money, be the most efficient, utilize resources the most effectively. That's technological as well. Take your technologies and maximize. Transform what's already there into something which is better, or fix things which are broken within the context of what already is. You need those people. But you also, to take advantage of the future of technology and how um, that can hedge against the future of technological advances, which are rapidly evolving. Dedicate a portion of your business to innovate, and people who have a mindset for innovation. Those are the explorers. Those are the visionaries. Those are people that are okay with failure and okay with like what can be, what is. Like there's a different mindset of people who want to explore. That's like entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are the explorer bees of capitalism. Okay. They're the
Mhm.
ones who are testing things and they're okay with things breaking and failing. They're okay with that's just built into them to do that. Technology has got, I believe, has the same trade-off. And I believe it's like almost like an 80-20. Same thing with bees. 80% of it, take your technological solutions and maximize them. Maximize your investment, keep your business transforming and rectifying inside of that hive. Okay. But then dedicate some dollars and some time to some explorer bees in the organization. Go find new things, new technology. How does it apply? New technological solutions, and how can that um, take advantage of a new invention that will make our customers serve better, or a technology which will disrupt. You're Netflix in the age of Blockbuster, and you're like, we're gonna take and and disrupt this using technology. We're going to be Uber in the age of taxis, and we're like, we're going to take this spare. They looked at something very simple. Cars are there's spare capacity in cars. Let's create a solution where those can just become
The
um,
taxis.
taxis. Why do we
Mhm.
have to have a taxi? Let's call it cartel, which is what it is,
Mhm. Mhm.
be the only way that we can get around. No, let's take advantage of all these people that have got vehicles that have got spare capacity to them and disrupt the entire industry. That's the same idea. Same thing with what Elon Musk did with SpaceX. Like, hey, let's disrupt the industry. Let's build our own rockets and do. They blew up a lot of stuff in the process. um, because he was okay with taking that risk.
Yeah.
Now that SpaceX has taken, when you get into the world of he explored to invent. Now that it went from invention, it's now in the maximizing of efficiency. Now it's a whole different group of people. Let's launch as many satellites as we possibly can under Starlink. Let's work with NASA and launch as much as we can to the space station. Let's maximize the cost and the value generation because we've got a proven technology that works. But to
Mhm.
get there required a whole bunch of exploration. Same thing
Jody,
happens throughout
it's
all of.
fascinating to me that the solutions are so often already in nature. The way to run your technology organization, you can watch Beehive and get some of your answers. That's an incredible story. So we're coming up on our time, and I just want to ask you, what else can readers look forward to in your book?
Great.
Because if it isn't already apparent to everybody, there are so many different enriching, well, things that are going to blow your mind, in my opinion, from how to break down TQ for yourself and your organization to frameworks for being able to understand and actually align and create solutions and guide innovation through this real integration pathway within your organization. There's a lot there. So what do you want to highlight that maybe we haven't covered, or just a way of summarizing?
Sure. There's two other concepts which are organization focused. So we've been
Mhm.
talking about digital mindset, innovation mindset, which is really for the leader to see
Mhm.
these again, see those see things differently. See, like it's your job as leaders to see that. The organization focused concepts of the physics of technology and the apex innovation model are organization focused. Now let's take these technological chop, these challenges of opportunity, and the physics is intended to give the business leader what is the impact of this technological thing called chop, challenge or opportunity. What's the impact? And it uses physics of aviation, thrust, drag, lift, and weight. They're opposing forces in aviation, which lets a plane fly. Well, in what I call the physics of technology, is that when you look at technological concepts or ideas, the business leader needs a way of understanding what's the physics of it, or a way of helping them see the physics so that they can make the connection of what impact it's going to have on their business. If I invest in technology that creates more capacity, it creates speed for my team to operate. It creates less friction. That's thrust. That's you turn everything on in the morning, and that's the power that gets you going down the runway. Where interruption to that, a down system, the internet's not working, email is broke, your ERP is not operational. That's drag. That just puts a parachute out the back of your plane as it's going down the runway and stops you in your tracks. And when you take a technological idea and you say that's drag, what that situation, that technology, that thing that reoccurs is drag on my business, which means it brings my business, it brings a department down, it brings my sales team down. I can't afford drag like that because I've invested in thrust, and that together, if you can't even get up off the ground, how are you intended to get any kind of lift in the business? Any lift whatsoever. Generate additional revenue, be able to have profit. Opposing lift is weight. Weight is technological debt. Weight is unmanaged, unmaintained systems which are old, outdated. We had a company that invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in a new ERP system that we told them This is based upon technology from the 80s. You are buying technological debt, which means it
Mhm.
required way more thrust for it to even get a little bit of lift. And every incremental amount of lift that they needed so that they could get insights, that they could expand and integrate with, became harder and harder because they had all this weight. They had technological weight holding them down, as opposed to investing in a technology which was top of the line, underlying technology. They could integrate and vertically integrate and create insights and be able to hook tools up to and be able to really go like an F-15 straight up. It just it that weight kept them from being able to get lift. That's the physics. The physics, the whole chapter on it is intended to give the business leader an idea of what impact does whatever the topic, what impact does it have? And once you identify impact, it helps you prioritize and understand, oh, this is weight. That's why it takes me so long to get that report that I need. I got all this debt. That's why I'm seeing regular drag is because I've got so much weight. These systems are out of date. They're failing they're failing regularly. It's because they're old. But it then
Mhm.
creates drag, and drag keeps me out of like doesn't even get me off the ground. So physics technology very important. Then comes the apex innovation model. The
Mhm.
apex innovation model is you take all that physics we just talked about and identifying what the impact is, and then the apex innovation model is where does that reside inside of the technology function of your business, so you can start becoming practically applying people and resources to adapt addressing it. What most business leaders do not have any vantage point of, and this is what we've seen over all these years, they don't know where to focus their energy and where does that resource go? Who do we hold accountable? What role is that inside the business? And the
Mhm.
Apex Innovation Model gives you this four pyramid approach of just think of it like a dartboard. And it's like that problem goes here, this problem goes here, this problem goes here, this problem goes here. And guess what? Those problems are related to these people. And I want to hold you accountable for this, and you accountable for this, and you accountable for that. And now
Mhm.
they can make, as opposed to, I don't want my systems to be down anymore, fix it. Like,
Right.
and then get some gobbledygook back from a
You give
technology.
them a natural map, a template map for their system, which is extremely useful by the end of the book. I mean, the whole book, as you've even shared with the physics of technology, it's different ways to be able to see, understand, then communicate, integrate, execute your technology. And it's mind blowing. And then also like it's so simple the way that you share it, but it's not. These things have been, as you say, that the tick has taken advantage of the fact that up to this point it hasn't seemed simple to most business leaders. So, Jody, final question is, what are you excited about now? Like, you've got this book, it's it's coming out very soon. Like, what's next for you and Blackline in the future? What are you excited about?
Well, for me is uh, to get this book in the hands of business leaders and then see what the feedback is, to see how well it resonates, um, to clarify, to create a conversation. The intention of this was not to sell a million copies of my book. It'd be nice if that happened,
Hmm.
but that wasn't the intention. The intention was here's an idea, here's a concept, get it in the hands of business leaders, and then create a conversation around it to help them explore the ideas and then gain their own aha moments and set up where now we can have like, hey Jody, I understand that does this mean this, does it apply, my problem is X, does that, is this in your model where that should go, so they can be better equipped, better buyers, holding people accountable so that they can gain the true value. There's a value gap. I call it the tech value gap. The They invest X, the potential is Y, but they're only getting Z, and that gap, what we've seen is the it's about 50%. So the most 95% of the organizations we work with are 60, they get a 60% or below when you evaluate their technology against the gold standard, against the best practice standard. Their gap is 40 to 50% of value that they are not seeing from their current technological investment. They're overspending and underdelivered. It's intended to close that gap for them so that they can get better at of recognizing the value. And in turn, if they're getting more recognizing the value, their organizations will be better served by the technology, and it'll be better outcomes for them. It'll be better outcomes for their people. It'll be better outcomes, period. And that's what drives me. If this book can accomplish that mission, then I believe it's a success.
Yeah. Unleash that silent value that's just sitting there waiting to be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
Amazing. Jody, thank you for an absolutely packed episode in terms of concepts and content and new ideas to walk away with. And listeners, I mean, it'll be when this episode is dropping, that means we are just a few short weeks away if the book isn't already released when you're watching it. So be on the lookout for that, and links coming from the Skinny platform and from Jody at Blackline. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Jody, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. As always, appreciate the time.
Yep. See you next time, everyone. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Expanders Podcast, presented by the Skinny Platform. You can catch more episodes and be notified of newly released episodes by following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or subscribing on YouTube. For more information on the Expanders Podcast and the Skinny Platform, visit our website, www.theskinnyplatform.com.